Very glad to welcome back to the show. I've got Mark Leibovit with me. He has won all sorts of awards, including Timer's Digest for gold market timing, for the stock market, long-term, short-term. There's a big list, but today I'm going to start by talking to Mark about something he shared with us at the World Outlook Conference in 2014 when I asked him, hey, what's going to be the big surprise? What's the area of the market that people don't have on their radar screen at this point? And Mark said, you know what? You've got to look at the marijuana stocks. You've got to look at them, and you've got to look at who's going to supply them, because this is going to be a growth industry. He said he foresaw a lot more legalization. Well, how appropriate when we have the new legislation just tabled in Canada in the last while about legalizing marijuana. I welcome Mark back to the show. Mark, you must have had a smile on your face when you saw that Canada has got that legislation put forward.
Absolutely, and when California passed it too, it seems like the whole world's moving toward the legalization. Uruguay is the only other country besides Canada that has legalized it or will legalize it. So it's a trend, no question about it. The train's left the station, Mike.
You write the Vice newsletter, among others, the VR Trader, et cetera, and I'll give more details in a minute. But first, Mark, how's that sphere changed even in the last 3 years when you've been bringing it to your investors and subscribers' attention?
Well, we modified the newsletter a little bit. Now we call it the Cannabis Vice letter because of so much of the action up there. But, we're still early in the game. Stocks have moved a lot, and you've got to trade them a little bit. I mean, obviously, when you see a stock like Canopy Growth go from 2 to 14 and then back off to 7, I mean, there's a lot of volatility in the group. So, if you want to be a little bit of a trader, there's certainly that opportunity. But legalization here in the U.S. is probably not going to occur until, from what I'm hearing, 2021. So we still have another 3.5 years down here for federal approval, and that's through the Marijuana Policy Project, which is a lobbyist group that I'm in touch with that works in Washington and trying to get that legalized here in the U.S. But it's still early. A lot of companies still going public in Canada, down here. A lot of funds being raised. There's so many opportunities. I mean, I'm invested in a couple new IPOs coming both here and Canada. We could talk about those if you're interested. But just a lot of money to be made. It's a growth industry. Again, you got to pick your points of entry. I would say if you just take a portfolio of the big 10, 12 big name stocks and sit on them for 2 or 3 years, you're probably going to see some nice gains, and just be patient. If you're a trader, obviously there's going to be some swings. Now, we had this 420 event, the April 20 event this past Thursday. For your listeners who are not familiar with that, that's like the big marijuana celebration day around the world.
Oh, we got a lot of people listening from Vancouver today, Mark, and you better believe they know that.
Okay, so the 420 event came and gone. So the stocks ran up a little bit into that event and now backed off a little bit because there's a lot of anticipation about it. It seems like every week, even a couple times a week in cities all over the U.S. at least, there's cannabis conferences, events going on. But the big thing is that this is an industry, as you indicated a moment ago, and there's more to it than just the marijuana and growing the marijuana. You got companies that provide the equipment and the lights and the infrastructure. There's one company I'm involved with now that's raising capital, Greenleaf Investment Fund, where they buy physical properties to lease to cannabis growers. They're doing a crowdfunding thing, in fact, now here in the U.S. So, there's ways. There's a company that went public about 6 months ago, Innovative Properties here in the U.S., which is, again, a REIT, essentially a real estate investment trust. You're going to get dividends based on the income from the properties, and the properties are leased to cannabis growers. So there's so many angles to this. It's just not growing some marijuana. So you got to really do your homework, and we have an extensive list of names, and we're looking for new opportunities as they come to us.
Are there any, leaders in the field? I mean, has anybody, or is it too early to say, some may be bigger than others, but there's been leadership emerging in this space that you think might have some longevity?
Well, the biggest 2 or 3 names, and I don't want to prejudice against so many other good companies, both in the U.S. and Canada, but the biggest name is GW Pharmaceutical. We've talked about that on the show before, GWPH on the NASDAQ. Here in the U.S., you're talking a stock that's trading at $116 a share, and they have a lot of FDA potential approvals in the pipeline. They're a U.K. company. There's a lot of speculation they're going to be bought out, probably $175, $200 a share. Some companies are projecting, brokerage firms are projecting it could be $300 stock. They have a product called Sativex, which has already been approved based on marijuana. So that's the big blue chip here in the U.S. Then, of course, you got Canopy Growth in ticker symbol WEED in Canada. I guess that's your biggest blue chip name, I guess, if you can refer to a blue chip in this sector. But of course, you got Freya and Aurora as well, and those are big, pretty stable names that I would be recommending in any portfolio. But I wouldn't limit it to those. In fact, as you probably know, Mike, just last week, Horizons launched a marijuana fund, an ETF, exchange traded fund. I'm hoping to work on a similar project down here, but you can buy it's HMMJ on the Toronto Exchange. It's around $10-11 a share. You can just buy that fund and participate in a whole slew of cannabis stocks. So the fact that ETFs are now being created and mutual funds in the sector really legitimizes the whole thing. It's amazing now.
Now, would you expect, again, at an industry that's fairly new, to see more volatility? Like when you first were talking to our audience about it at the World Outlook Conference and on this show, I remember thinking how important it was to have the market timing that you do, is to look at is volume building there. You're going to need that because it's not going to be as stable, I wouldn't think, as, a mature industry.
They do trade. There is the swing points. I do see the volume reversals and on the charts. And, part of me says, there's a core position you want to hold in some of these things. If you're an investor, there's always the opportunity to trade. We have traded, a few of them in and out in the newsletter. But I try to keep, a core position because it's still a fledgling industry. And like you say, with the Canadian legalization coming up and the boom that's going to occur there, I mean, there's so many things that are occurring day to day here and it's early in the cycle that I hate to be out of the stock. So I would suggest keeping a core portfolio, and if you're in the mood to trade some of them, check with our newsletter. We do make some comments about trading them, but I find that, the one exception was, of course, that Canopy when it ran up so much that day. I think it was back in November, it was a $6 stock, and literally in 3 days it's 14. I mean, there's certainly times you take a little money off the table. But I'm not worrying about anything, really changing. It's there's a little pushback here in the U.S. with Jeff Sessions, as the Attorney General. A lot of people worried about that. But, there's too many voters, there's too many young people, there's too much money being invested now. I see a little pushback, but I don't see anything that's going to dramatically change the direction. So, of course, this is just one exciting sector. There's other things that are happening in the market that we track as well, but I just feel like this is fun, and you meet a lot of interesting people, and you learn a lot. I think it's and also, the medical aspect of it, the GW Pharmaceutical that I mentioned a moment ago, there's so many medical benefits that are being unveiled with the sector that, I don't really think about smoking marijuana. I think about it helping people that are ill, and some of the research that's coming out that's really proving there's medical benefits. So I think that's really the big key here that's going to keep pushing the industry forward is the medical breakthroughs, many of which are coming out of Israel. Therapix, TRPX went public recently. It's another name you want to jot down out of Israel. OWC Pharmaceutical, OWCP. These are Israeli companies in the marijuana field. And just as a quick sideline, I don't have the scientist's name off the top of my head here. I should have his name. But the original research for marijuana, the fact that marijuana is broken into two components, THC, which is the component that makes you high, and the CBD, which is the more medical aspect. All that original research came out of Israel in the 1970s. So now it's been, now we're talking about it more today, but there's a bunch of companies in Israel that have some significant breakthroughs in the medical marijuana area, so we're tracking those as well. So when I see those medical breakthroughs, I get more excited.
I'm talking with Mark Leibovit. You can find him at Leibovit, vrnewsletters.com, vrnewsletters.com, Leibovit, vrnewsletters.com. Mark, you just said there's a whole bunch of other areas of the market that are interesting right now. I want to get to those, but first I've got to take a break. And by the way, I'm going to give you some details of Mark's doing a webinar here for the first time, which I think is going to be a great opportunity to get a little more in depth on this kind of stuff. And I'll give you the details on that coming up very shortly. So stay with us right here on the Money Talks Network. Coming up, I've got a shocking stat. I got a goofy award for you. You want to hear about a tax grab This one might be top of the list, and it's Canadian. This one may be top of the list. You'll stay tuned for that, I hope, for the Goofy Award. But right now I've got Mark Leibovit on the line with me, vrtrader.com. You can find him at leibovitvrnewsletters.com. But he also does, we're just talking about the Cannabis Vice letter, talking about coming up the gold letter. But I want to let you know something. This coming Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Pacific time, Mark's going to do something really new. He hasn't done this before. It is a webinar that he'll get a chance. If you're thinking about, if the cannabis side, for example, interests you, this is a webinar that will give you specific stock picking, market forecasting, timing, in, out, that kind of stuff. It's $69. It is this coming Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Like, all you have to do is go to moneytalks.net, click on the homepage. It gets you the information there, and you can sign up. There's a limited number of people, because the technology sort of limits that, allowed to be part of this. But I think you're going to be able to ask him questions directly, by the way, during the webinar. And I mean, the thing is live, but he's going to specifically talk about, when, how, what are the price ranges he's looking at, so you can take action. Oil and gas is going to be included in that. Mark, let me come to the gold market just for a second, because you do the gold letter. Just give me a quick take, the overview of the gold market for you right now.
Still a bull, Mike. I'm still looking for new highs above last year's 1375. We hit a little resistance here around 1300 in the last few days. We may pull back to the mid to low 1200s, maybe. But my forecast model for the year is positive, and my original projection said there was a chance this year we could even see 1400, 1450 or more. So I'm positive. I'm a little concerned that silver has lagged here a little bit. I'd like to see silver start to move and break out. And we also have to be aware that, seasonality for gold and silver tends to end around February, March, and we're already, into April. So the seasonal strength tends to start more in the late summer. So maybe it'll be a little more time before it breaks out and starts moving again. But I'm a bull.
Mark Leibovit's been Gold Market Timer of the Year, by the way. He does the gold letter on the webinar. I guess you got a chance to go into more specifics of what the targeting numbers are for you. But I want to get also to your take right now on the energy market, especially oil.
Well, we had a little double top here this past week, Mike. We got up to about $54 a few weeks ago. We got to just under that. Actually, it was the end of last week, and we just couldn't break through that 54 resistance. I'm overall, positive looking out months and months, but I think there's a chance here more of a pullback. And the fact we double top there, we're actually short for VR Trader. We bought the triple inverse gold ETF on Thursday, so we're up like 3-4 points in that just on a trade, looking for a little bit more on the downside. It may pop a little bit Monday because I think they overdid a little bit on Friday, but I'm still in that position. And the key is if we break under $47 a barrel, if that happens, then we're headed down low 40s, high 30s again, and it could be a big washout. So it looked like a top here, at least short term for those who are trading. And if you got to keep a stop, you'd keep it around that $54 level. But at the moment, it looks like except a little bit of a bounce, maybe Monday, Tuesday, back down again. That's how I read it.
Mark, can you give me, as I say, we only got about a minute and a half left here. Can you give me your sort of overview of the stock markets right now, whether it's the Dow or the S&P or in Canada?
Well, we sent out that forecast model to everyone who attended the World Outlook Conference, and if you looked at that little sketch that I drew there at the beginning of the year, it showed a high in March and a zigzag downward pattern, of course, just referring to the S&P down into summer. There were a couple bounces along the way, and sell may go away, comes in this time of year, but it seemed to have started in March, which is what the forecast model said. The only problem with the forecast is that, yes, the S&P and Dow have been a little sloppy here since March, and the banking stocks have been sloppy, which is a negative for the market, but the NASDAQ doesn't give up. And the big names like the Google and the Facebook and the Amazon and the Microsoft and so forth just continue up, virtually at their highs. So it seems like a two-tiered market here, and all the money is moving into big stocks like those big NASDAQ names. So I wouldn't get too bearish when you see leadership like that still holding up. I just think it's a sideways correction, and we're going to end up breaking out to new highs here sometime, by midsummer or late summer, the latest.
Well, it's a fascinating time, and Mark, I appreciate you finding time for us, and I just want to remind people to go to moneytalks.net. By the way, you can re-listen to any part of this interview there. There's a lot of great information coming at you, but also you can sign up for the webinar, which is taking place this coming Tuesday evening. You can sign up directly for that. Here, Mark, get specifics. If you're thinking about taking action or you want to get more information there, that's a great way to do it. So just go to moneytalks.net and you can sign up there. In the